Dude, why haven't you aged? You look exactly the same
It's all
from the
about
days in
it's all
Stormont.
about raw organic coconut oil on my face,
Is
and
that
then
is that what it is? I'm gonna I'm just gonna eat organic coconut oil all day.
in all fairness, I do eat coconut oil as well every day. So, hello, Mr. Chapman.
Hello, Mr.
Welcome to the
Casagrande. How you
roller
doing?
coaster.
It's
How's it
been a
going?
long time since we saw each other's faces,
That's true.
and it wasn't the back of a dimly lit van or a dingy, green room in a little venue.
Oh my goodness, and that was a dingy van. Do you remember
Oh
that?
yeah,
I have a
I do.
I have pictures of actually my XX band all in and you jumping inside like and there was no
Oh
room for.
yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh my god, I do remember that. I was just nestled amongst sausage and
Yes.
snack foods
Yes.
and bags and coats. Wow, that's
Yes.
really weird.
I still
That
have that picture
photograph just
somewhere.
like popped into my head.
I have that picture
Wow.
somewhere. I need to dig in and find it because that's precious. That's
So
precious.
we have both gone on a completely transformative life journey since that tour. I mean,
We
my God.
we we truly have. We truly have. Absolutely. I'm sure we're gonna be touching into all of those points because so much has changed for you and for me personally as well and professionally. But I guess back then when we met each other, it was I guess early days for Chapman guitars and
Yeah.
and so much has happened for you ever since.
Holy
But in order
Christ.
to give some context to people watching us and listening to us, I'd like you
Yeah.
to please just give us a little bit of a an intro about where were you born, about your origins and your musical influences, if family had
Okay.
any influence on you in your career, and yeah, let's kick off
Sure.
from there.
Okay. Well, before I do, I apologise. My children are due home in about 45 minutes, and they'll probably run around and play with unicorns and be loud. So we might hear some background gremlin noises.
Sounds good.
Um, I was born in London in St Pancras, and but I didn't really stay in England as a kid. So from London, my parents moved almost immediately to Luxembourg and then Holland. And I grew up really in Holland. I was in Amsterdam um, as a little kid, running around a forest, trying to dig up moles with my friends, discovering what a girl was. You know, living in a flat in Amsterdam next to a giant lake that was filled with huge sort of floating ducks that sort of floated in this thing, and they were big taps into the like pretend sculptures of taps into the lake. It was a really amazing childhood, and I just loved it. But when I was 8, my parents decided, the English education system's better. Dad had got a contract doing something in England, and so one day we left Holland, and I didn't know at the time. We just got in a car, and I was like, "Where are we going?" Ah, we're going to England. That was it. I had no idea, and I was devastated because I had loads of friends. I was starting my life. It was for me that was a really deep, profound, changing experience. I'll never forget my best friend Marek at the time throwing his toys at our car as we drove away because he'd been told by his parents I was leaving, and I didn't know. It was a deep cut, and I think as a result, I spent a lot of my youth desperately trying to make connections and friendships and anything that would tie me to a location because I'd moved quite a lot early on. And but then from that, there were some good things. I spoke reasonable French because in Luxembourg, obviously they speak Luxembourgish, but there's French as well. I went to an international school, and I was kindergarten, and I was learning French, Luxembourgish. Then in Holland, I learned I was basically a Dutch speaking kid, and anyone that's been to Holland will know, super friendly, welcoming. You know, it's really chilled. Moved my ass to Wiltshire in England, and it was, why don't you f off back to Clogland? You're not from round here. You know, go and eat some tulips, you little beardy weirdo. It was, I was the foreign kid. Even the teacher, I remember clear as day, the caretaker at the school turning to me and going, "You're not from here, are you?" And I was like, "No, I'm from Holland." You know, it was like this unusual thing. Anyway, I was the little foreign kid at school. I got bullied, even though I was like a foot taller than anybody. I didn't know, and I just went to school, did the thing, and one day at my senior school, John of Gaunt in Wiltshire, I heard this noise, and I was like, "What the fuck is that? Can I swear on this? I'm just going to swear anyway."
Of course you can.
And it was a student playing guitar. And I was just blown away by the sound. I mean, all he was doing was power chords, just, you know, like simple, like just Route 5. But for me, it was just the most amazing thing that ever happened, you know. And he said, "Yeah, wherever you put your finger, the note that it's on, that's what the chord is called. And then you use another finger, and it could be this one or this one." And I was like, "Oh my God, I need a guitar." So for my 16th birthday, my parents conspired with my uncle, and they got me a white Strat copy by a brand called Falcon. And I was just awful. I was beyond bad. I mean, I had a really good sense of melody. I had an okay sense of rhythm, but I couldn't play guitar. I mean, I was just, I didn't, something was missing from the equation. I'm going to tell you quite a lot of things I haven't told a lot of other people, Carl.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah. Some of it won't be happy, but it will all be.
But they are real.
Sorry?
But they are real.
Yes, it will be real. Because I haven't opened up about a lot of this in the past, because I've been kind of protecting it, but I think it's important to talk about these things. Anyway, I was missing something. And I got in a band with the kid that showed me the power chord. His name was Alex Bullis. He became my best friend, and he and I were in a band called Machine Head or Machine Power or something, I don't know. We made a flag that we would put behind us if we played a gig. And then, very sadly, he killed himself. And he was found in a car with a hose pipe, the exhaust, gassed himself. He'd been homeless for a few weeks beforehand. We'd had him in our house to feed him and try and help and reach out to friends and things. And it had been a gradual decline in his life, where he'd gone from fulfilled, musical, super crazy, effervescent, full of life, to just giving up completely. And it shocked me to the core. I mean, I was 17. I just couldn't believe it. He was my best friend. And it did something to me. And I mean, at his funeral, they played Jimi Hendrix, and it was this really weird experience, because I just couldn't get in my mind that he had gone, because he was so alive. Anyway, I shut myself away in my bedroom, and I just was just playing and playing. It was therapeutic. There was something in the playing that I could lose myself in. And in the process of losing myself in the playing, something clicked, and I got it. Something happened, and I understood. And suddenly I could just play the guitar, like the Matrix, plugged in the back of the head. I can play guitar. And it wasn't a pleasant experience going through that, but I made a vow to myself and to him that I would never stop in his, like, carry on for him sort of thing. I made a promise, which comes with its difficulties, because when you do something for someone else, you often forego your own, what you need in your life, sort of thing. So that was, in a way, the making of me as a guitarist was the loss of a friend. And something else that did is it gave me a lot of unanswered questions and sadness that I needed to catharsize. I needed to get out, purge. I needed help with it. And my parents were amazing, but they can't. No one can sit down and say, well, some people have a lot of problems, they don't talk about them, and then they choose to end their life, and it's very sad. But no one could really go through this with me. They were all sad too. So I wrote music, and initially it was stuff that I would just write on an acoustic and record on a little reel-to-reel, little tape, little audio cassette. I love those things. And then I would overdub them, and some of them were stupid songs, like almost nonsensical kids stuff, but there was something in them that was real, and I felt it help me like a medicine. And honestly, for anyone who's going through emotional turmoil or difficulty, I cannot emphasize enough how magical music is as a healing thing. I mean, you listen to a song, it'll make you cry or laugh, or it's just amazing. Anyway, moving on. I ended up getting guitar lessons from a teacher called Matt Evis, and he was a Welsh guy, a really good guitar shredder. Like, he would play Testament, Megadeth, Metallica, Sepultura, and I was like, oh, this is gonna get all my anger out and shred and be the fastest, player that I can. And at one point, I went in for a lesson, we had a coffee, sat down, he lit up a cigarette, and he went, Rob, I've got nothing else to teach you. And I was like, what do you mean? And he went, you've got everything I know. You better go to college. And I was like, what do you mean, go to college? He goes, well, there's this place that's just opened in London. It's called the Guitar Institute. And it's this new place. They've got really good teachers. I think you should go there and study guitar. It's either there or you go to America and Berkeley. And I was like, I don't want to go to America, sounds terrifying. And I'm like 17, 18 at the time. So for me, the idea of traveling to America, bearing in mind the internet didn't really exist, so I hadn't seen anything online. It was all just people talking or a magazine. I couldn't even contemplate going to America. So I ended up working in a factory for a couple of years, saving money. My parents gave me some money, which was really amazing. And I ended up going to the Guitar Institute in Acton, where I did a 1-year diploma course, and I studied intensively for about 6 months, found girls, takeaway food, living in London, all the normal stuff, and sort of, I could play pretty well when I went there, but I really wasn't paying attention to what I was learning from the incredible teachers. I mean, my teachers were David Kilminster, Sean Baxter, Barry Langton, just the best of the best. They were amazing, still are. And I took everything that I learned when the year ended, put it in a box, and then I had to get a job. And I was like, shit, this is it. I better get a job. I was in a band, but we weren't really doing anything. It was called Parker, but we weren't doing anything. I took all those notes, and I went through them one at a time until I really understood them. And then I sort of had an epiphany where intervallics and modal theory were understood. I got modal theory, which was, for me, huge, because suddenly I knew why all the chords were called what they're called. I knew what I could play over a chord, and I knew my options from one chord. I knew basic harmony theory. So I started teaching guitar for £5 an hour, alongside working in optics, and I was making spectacles. I was the laboratory assistant make your specs in an hour at an optician's called Dolland and
Really?
Aitchison in London, yeah, Putney. And I ended up making glasses for 3 or 4 of these laboratories until one day, thank God, somebody rolled in a machine that literally did my job instead of me. And they were like, yeah, you don't really have a job anymore. You're really sorry about that. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I went back to my parents, went back to Wiltshire from London. No money, no idea what to do. Ended up in a relationship, married, living in Wiltshire, and had a whole new set of friends, a whole new life in a way, because I'd left London, everyone there, moved to Wiltshire. It's like 3 hours away in a car. At the time, I couldn't drive. I was a late driver. And I made friends with a guy called Lee, who was incredible. Not Lee, the captain from Anderton's, but a guy called Lee Bryant. And Lee was this strong, he was a blacksmith. So he would make whole boats or bridges or intricate wrought fences or whatever. And he came to me as a guitar student. So I started teaching him, rock and metal, and then he ended up going to ICMP and studying guitar. And he would do, we would practice boxing together and stuff, like Chinese martial arts and things. And we got a band together, did a couple of sort of local farm gigs where, I was playing sort of the Kinks and Beatles covers and things. And then one day he was found dead in a hedge. And I really, again, couldn't quite believe that he had disappeared, because he was he was built like an ox, the strongest guy you could imagine. He was just strong and physical and full of life. He was a hard-working blacksmith, boxer, musician. And one day I got a phone call from his brother, and he was gone. He'd just been found dead. And it was like this cycle. I went into it again. I went into a deep depression, a real wishing I was religious, wishing I had something else to explain it to me. And then I went deeper and deeper into this hole and came out for some, God knows, whatever reason, I started singing. And I started singing because we had been singing together covers, and I'd written the song Breath with Lee around the time I was working with Lee. And so for some reason it just felt right to sing, and I ended up writing so much music around the time that Lee passed away, because for some reason in my body I take things that are sad, the things that are angry, and I process them into music. So it's like something happens that makes me sad or angry, it comes into my body, and I deal with it by writing music, and that's the process of me healing, sort of thing. Not to put it too weirdy, beardy, tree hugging, spiritual. Sorry, I had a hard day of singing today. But it really helped me to. I don't really like the phrase "come to terms," because I don't think you can come to the terms of a friend passing. But if anyone's familiar with editing, Photoshop or video, it sort of reduced the opacity on the sadness, so that when I remembered Lee and Alex Bullis, I remembered the good things and the positivity and the strength and the music and the creativity and the love, and I remembered less the passing and the difficulties and the pain. And for me, I was like, this is a really important thing for me to do, writing music. And so I made a decision then to write music. I would be a musician. Before, I was a guitar player. Now I was a musician. I wanted to sing and write music and record. And I recorded a song called Mantra of the Monkey Lord, which was this progressive rock thing where I'm desperately trying to sing, and I sound so English, just the most English voice ever. It's painful to me, um, but it was an important thing for me to do, to go through that. And around this time, I got headhunted by Orange Amplifiers to do some demonstration work for them. They'd seen it. I'd shot a video about the Tiny Terror amplifier, this tiny little amp head, and they really liked it, and they wondered if I wanted to shoot more, or did I want another amp? Did I want to come and see them at the headquarters? And I was like, yeah, I mean, sounds great. So I went down, and the MD at the time, he said to me, you know, we YouTube's this new thing, and we see you doing really well on YouTube. What about if you made some more videos for us? And I was thinking, I mean, yeah, I can do. I'd only been making them because it was just sort of fun and creative and stupid, and I was an idiot just making silly videos that in a way promoted my guitar. I was teaching guitar full time, by the way.
So Rob, sorry, let me just ask you. So by this time, when you engaged with Orange, you were already doing work and making videos for YouTube.
Yeah.
What year was that, more or less?
Oh my God.
Because you're in the forefront of this whole YouTuber kind of thing,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Well, I got lucky because I made videos on MySpace, and one person commented, "Hey, you should try this new thing called YouTube. It's really cool. You can make videos on it. Anybody can see them." I mean, it was like the second year that YouTube existed. We're talking about 18 years ago, I think. Now, and as a guitar teacher, I thought, well, if I make videos where I sort of say, you know, hey, this is a major scale, and that's how I play it, and these are the notes, and each one's an intervallic if you measure them against each other, and all this kind of stuff. At least it's a resource for students, and also it's a kind of a little advertisement. It'll stay there kind of forever, you know. Because I realised when I put up posters around town, other guitar teachers would take them down. I'd been very lucky. I had done some session work for, at the time, EMI, for Ingrid Malmsteen, and I had done some other sessions for Universal. And so on my guitar posters, I would put Rob Chapman, session guitar player, and then I would put quotes from Universal and EMI. But the local teachers didn't like that very much, so they would take them down, or you know, it was a bit, I suppose, competitive in Wiltshire. There weren't very many guitar teachers, and I had a lot of students. And I realised, well, putting up a physical poster, it gets taken down. But if I put up a video, they can't take that down. So I made videos, and it became a kind of addiction. It was something that I enjoyed doing, and I wasn't taking it seriously. I was just having a laugh, you know. As anyone who watches any of my early videos can see, I'm just like, you know, caffeinated, excited about life, playing guitar, blah, 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 and trying to purge the sadness of the loss of my friends, really, honestly, and going through a difficult relationship with my now ex-wife, and in a way not dealing with that very well and hiding from it. So anyway, Orange hired me to be the Orange clinician, and I said, well, what's a clinician? They said, well, we don't really know, we've never had one, but we think you could play gigs for us and represent Orange like an ambassador. Come to guitar shows and you know, play at places like, you know, Music Messe or NAMM, and I was like, what's that? I'd never heard of it because the internet didn't exist. No one had ever broadcast them. I mean, the internet did exist, but no one had put videos up of the NAMM show or Music Messe, or I'd never seen them. Ibn Buren, or, you know. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll go to Germany and play this thing called Music Messe. Turned up, it was the biggest. Have you been to Music Mess?
No, I haven't.
Have you been to the NAM show?
Yes, yeah.
Right. Music Master in its heyday was twice the size of NAM. It was
Wow.
enormous. There were vehicles that would take you from hall to hall. Now it's not like that at all. But back in the day, Music Master was the big show. Anyway, I'm in front of this massive fucking orange castle of amps, shredding, playing over my backing tracks. They were giving me shots of Jägermeister. I don't drink, so I'm just like, I don't even care that I'm playing. I've just gone. Paul Gilbert walks past and gives me the rock hands, and I'm like, shoot me now. This is the best thing that ever happened in my life, you know. And I did what I always do, which is like I found a community of people. I love people. For me, everything about music that I love involves doing it with people, band or in a studio, or it's the people interactions that I thrive on. And I found a little community of demonstrators, 4 of us, and I made really good friends with 3 of these guys, and they demonstrated for Washburn or for PV or whatever, whatever. And one of them in particular was called Matthias Arp. Matthias was the German Joe Satriani. He was unbelievable, talented. I don't want to say shredder because shredder's almost like a derogatory term, just like beyond comparison technique, but with a story. And when you write instrumental music, so few instrumental guitar players, to my ear, have a sense of story and lyric in the melody. And he had this amazing sense of melody and story. And we were like, we were really good friends. We used to swap backing tracks at these shows. So he would play some of my music, and then I would struggle playing through some of his. And he played for PV, did all the demonstrations for the PV range, and also for Buddha amps, because PV bought Buddha. And we were going to record together, and then one day he died. Had a aneurysm, out of nowhere, just died. Left behind children and a wife. I found out in the middle of shooting a video at World Guitars in Hitchin, which was a guitar store I was filming for. And that was the last... I know this is difficult point. You weren't expecting any of this, and I'm very sorry. But I just feel like it's important to give you the real story, my origin story, if you will. Because these aren't easy things to talk about, and they're not easily digestible truths. But these things happen all the time. And men don't talk about this shit. They don't. They bottle it up. And also, I think we should normalize, I don't want to sound like a meme, but we really should normalize talking about mental health. I think it's really important, And I mean, this poor guy had an aneurysm out of nowhere, disappeared. The community couldn't believe it. We were like, "What? Matthias Arp?" But I was on the phone to him 3 weeks ago on my car on the way to. He was working with the bassist for Joe Satch, and they're like, "He's gone." I'm like, I just couldn't believe it. It made me realize you gotta do shit now. Don't fuck around. You have no idea what you've got. No one does. It's a miracle that we even exist, and you need to full force fucking go for it if you want to do something that's important to you. And in a way, Matthias going was that was the straw that broke the camel's back of me doing any other job, because I wasn't really making a lot of money as a teacher, teaching guitar, and the band wasn't quite doing very well, and these things, it wasn't really solidifying into, this is a life plan for a guy that at some point would like to have kids and, family, but be a musician. And when Matthias went, I quit the band I was in. The band was called the Black Hand, and I'd formed that band. It was we were working with Eddie Kramer, who I'm still very good friends with to this day. I owe a lot to Eddie Kramer. We had recorded at Abbey Road twice. We weren't signed, but we would have been if we wanted to. We had a lot going for us. But something in me needed to get out of the band. The front guy at the time was a bit of an ego, had a little bit of a drug problem, and I didn't want to dedicate the music that I was writing and leave it in an environment where I wasn't really happy. For me, it was super important that the music I wrote that came from these tragedies, these people that I loved, through me, was honoured and respected in the way that fit what it was that I did. Because my hope was that the songs I wrote would be medicine for someone else, which is what eventually happened for me. So I quit the Black Hand, went solo, wrote a bunch more songs, focused on YouTube. And then things started getting happier. So I got a phone call from a guy called Lee Anderton, and he said, "Hey Rob, I've been watching your videos. They're really cool. Anderton's is thinking of doing YouTube videos. Would you like to be, could you come along and be involved?" So I went down, met Lee, and immediately we were just best friends, stupid together. It was from the first video we shot, we were like, well, we're just going to do that. That's just what we're going to do. It was effortless. It was simple and natural. And he he shared a lot of my sentiments and my stupid Monty Python style British sense of humour, And so I wrote music, had my own thing going on, did Anderton's, and it was through going to Anderton's in Guildford where I eventually walked into a pub called the Stoke, and the guy that served me at the bar was called Rabia Massad, had a massive afro, and he went, "Are you Rob Chapman from YouTube?" And I went, "Yeah." And he went, "Oh wow, I'm at the ACM playing guitar." And long story short, Dave Hollingworth and Ben Meinel were in a band called Chase and Jade, and their singer had left because he was ill, and they'd all come to the ACM to study. I turn up and I'm looking for a band, so we were like, well, fuck, we're a band. That was it. And originally it was going to be the Rob Chapman band, but I said, I really don't have that kind of an ego. I don't want to be the Rob. Please, can we just be a band? And they were like, yeah. So we ended up calling it Dorje.
Uh-huh.
And that's how Dorje formed.
And that's how we met.
Yeah, and that's how we met.
Wow, Rob, first, thanks for sharing all of that. I think this was the best. I don't think I can absolutely say that this was the best intro and the longest intro as well of any chapter of my podcast so far. But it was it was very touching to hear it, because I didn't know any of
nobody
of it.
I'll be honest with you, Carl. I've only ever told one other podcast some of these details, and I have been very hesitant to talk about this because, I mean, it was a super difficult thing for me to navigate as a young man. But recently, when I was in America touring, I met people who had said to me, I had suicidal thoughts, I was in a really bad place, I had cancer, and I watched your videos, or I listened to your music, or I did this, and I got through it. And for me, It's all I needed to hear to never stop. Do you know? It
Absolutely.
was, it had come kind of full circle because a lot of the music, if you listen to the lyrics or the feeling of the movements, unfortunately, my music is about loss and grieving and sadness and anger. When I'm happy, I don't write shit. Nothing. I wish. Probably I should join a reggae band or ska band to see if I could get some. I'm a super happy guy because I found my medicine, my way of getting this out of me into something that can help other people. And I didn't want to talk about it before because I didn't always know the person who would be talking to me. I know you, and I know that you are deep, spiritual, and understanding of these things, and that you would treat it the way it needed to be treat treated. So I felt like it was time to be honest about what it was that made me who I am, and it was loss.
I think it's incredible, and again, I thank you for sharing it because um, people see it sometimes, those videos and hear about it, and this person who's got this guitar company and plays those shows and does this and does that. People don't get the full picture, and in life, nothing comes easy. And more often than not, there is a very um, tough path to get through before you
Yeah,
actually reap the, I was going to use the benefits, but it's not benefits. The to reap the gains from it, and not a lot of people get into the details as much as you just did. A lot of people, even like the biggest icons, and you hear the interviews, and it's always very superfluous. It's always very on the surface. They don't really dive very much into things that are extremely important. And obviously this is a very unique in many ways because you've been through like three different friends of yours that lost their lives, and it's obviously very unusual. People go through those things in life, but not very often that many people. And a lot of people would dive into alcohol, drugs, lose themselves
yeah,
in various ways. And clearly you've managed to turn very, very difficult times and moments and feelings into something extremely productive. Be that on tough lyrics, like you just said, on very not very happy um, um, wordings in terms of putting songs together, lyrics itself, but you've managed to find your way. And you actually, like you said, you are not in any shape or form. I would never ever imagine you being a negative person
no,
ever. You know what I mean? Like I only have you with a smile on your face when I think about Rob Chapman. It's always Rob with a big smile on your face. It's always Rob accommodating and helpful and funny. And I remember when we first met, because this was like 10 years ago. And I remember the guys in my band, they were really like talking about those Chapman guitars, and I was like, what the hell, Chapman guitars? And they're, oh, those guitars, blah blah blah. This guitarist, this guy. I'm like, oh, and okay, we're gonna go on tour, and it's really interesting because from all of the things that I did in my life, it was the this was the thing that I myself was not actually involved on getting it. Do you know what I mean? This
yeah,
tour, I didn't get the tour. Who got the tour was actually my two other guitarists at the time. And it's just one other funny, interesting fact in life how you know that basically led us to be here today having this conversation
yeah,
and reconnecting also after a while not being so much in touch for various reasons. And them at the time bringing me the Chapman guitar world and the Rob Chapman world and the Dorje world back then. And eventually on that particular tour, that we ended up doing a tour together in 2013. And I ended up meeting again like somebody that is up till this day a very dear friend, which is Phil X.
Phil, yeah,
And I mean, so much came out of that. I think 2 weeks that we were touring the UK together. you know. And I think that in life there's so many of those things that happen, and it's just down to us to really kind of like be observant of them. And you know, sometimes life just gets on the way, and sometimes we just don't have the will, or don't really know how to basically maintain relationships. And I think like maintaining relationships, they are so extremely important. And again, back to your story, hearing those stories and sharing those stories with people, it just, you know, gives people a level of hope to that, you know, you can endure anything really if you put your energy towards the right things. And sometimes obviously most all of us, we just, I mean, the mind takes over, our
Yeah,
head just becomes extremely heavy, and we can't just see light at the end of the tunnel. And I mean I can only say that, you know, if I admired you before this conversation, I admire you much more now as
thanks.
well, man.
I mean, I think it's important to say I don't think people need to go through suffering always to create art. Like, I don't think it's an essential thing. But I think for me, the three losses, each of them was a kick back onto the path I was supposed to be on. For me, I was too afraid to begin with, and I didn't have the right mindset, and I didn't know I needed it. So each time it kicked me back onto the path. But I don't think it's essential to go through suffering to be a good musician, you know. I don't want people thinking, taking away from this, oh man, I'm going to go out and do loads of drugs, or get upset or get my heart broken. That's like an old parody. And also, you know, you were saying it's a good job you didn't get into drink and drugs. I tried. I mean, I tried drinking, but I'm a complete lightweight. You know, it didn't do
We are
it
not
for me.
advising anyone to do that, but
No,
you know,
no,
it's
no.
part of, you know, yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, I love a good gin and tonic sometimes. I like a bit of a whiskey, Glenfiddich, if Glenfiddich's listening. But I'm way more into meals with my friends, nice big, you know, Mediterranean meals, collecting stupid guitar gear that I don't need, um, playing Elden Ring, um, WhatsApp chat groups with my buddies, you know, Pete Lee, Beer, all the guys, we just chat shit. It's about friends, is really what it's about. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey,
How
and I feel in many ways like I began this so long ago because I remember listening to some of the Dorje material from the first EP, and I'm realizing, oh shit, I don't know how to do mix. Like, I'm not properly mixing. This is, I'm straining. It makes me feel a bit weird because I'm like, oh damn, why did I have to record that song there? But in a way, it made it sound the way it needed to sound at the time. But it was so long ago. And with Clockwork Wolf and Company now, I've done a lot of letting go of the requirement of perfection, to the extent that we've got a gig coming up in Norway where we're going to be playing with Larry Basilio, you know, Kiko Loureiro, Robin Ford, and we've prepared a handful of songs. We're just going to jam. We're just going to turn up, start the song off, jam in the song. We're going to jam the ending. We do loads of improvised middle sections. We write parts as we're playing. I'll create a verse. I do a lot of improvised singing. I'm free. I freed myself of the requirement of the perfection of technique, because in Dorje it was all about everything is absolutely flawless. The singing has to be perfect. The sections are all, you know, perfectly aligned and nothing changes, and the tempo is set, and we're playing to a click. And with Clockwork, I wanted to let go of all of those restrictions and have the whole band be completely creatively free to express what we need to do in the moment. And it's like this new stage of my musical adventure, because yes, I can play technically and I can do sweeping and, you know, strange rhythms and things, but sometimes that doesn't emit a feeling, you know? Like today, we were jamming in the middle of, we do a cover of To Survive from Dorje, and I found this little arpeggiated figure, and I was just lost in this fucking 6 notes where I was just bending this thing, and the guys were feeling it, and we were there for like a minute and a half just doing this arpeggiated sequence that just worked. And then I looked at the drummer, and he was like, "Yeah, we're back in," and suddenly it's this new section, and that for me is so much fun. The freedom and the creativity, and no gig will ever be the same, you know. And I think that's the direction I'm going in now. Freedom from the song. The song is guidelines now in Clockwork. It doesn't have to be the be all and end all.
Mm-hmm,
It's it's a guideline.
in terms of artists that really influenced you, like music, like when you were a teenager and
Oh
start, yeah. So who really kind of like you listen to a lot, and who were the very first artists that came along in your radar, and that you would say that definitely kind of like triggered that, you know, feeling of grabbing that guitar and eventually playing it?
So there are obviously a lot of them. So rather than just tell you names of people, what I can do, because I've thought about this a lot, is I can tell you a name and then what they did for me. So, for example, when I first heard guitar on a recording and knew it was a guitar, it was The Edge from U2. Because I was like, "What's that?" And my dad went, "That's an electric guitar," and I was like, "Shit, that's cool. I really like that sound." I knew I liked the sound of guitar. And then I heard Jimi Hendrix, and my brain just exploded with what, it's going left, it's going right, it's going in, it's expanding, it's contracting. It's like a three-dimensional monster thing being thrown around, formless, like the Tao. You know, it's just this rotating energy of creation. That for me was huge. Peter Green, I discovered subtlety, nuance in guitar playing. He could be really quiet or really loud, and it made a huge difference. Him and Danny Cohen in Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, it was all about being a voice. You know, it was mad. But the two real drivers for me, Joe Satriani made me want to be a guitar player. When I heard him, very specifically, watching him play Satch Boogie at the Seville Guitar Expo. I had it on a cassette tape, VHS thing. I must have watched that performance 100 times. I just couldn't believe how good it was. That made me want to be a guitar player, Joe Satriani. And then when I eventually finally found Metallica, that's when I wanted to get in a band. And it was, I had a videotape of a Metallica kind of documentary thing where they're touring with Cliff, and they go into a store and they buy beers, and Lars is being so fucking funny, and the whole band are one creature together. Unstoppable power of friendship. And for me, it was how they were together as a band, as friends, as brothers. And then the music was just like, whoa! It's like orchestral. It's not just fifths, there's thirds, there's fucking sixths. It's like this orchestration of classical music played through acoustic, electric guitars, and the power and all this stuff. But Metallica made me want to be in a band. That was the vibe was there, man. Especially, I have to say, James and Lars. Because I don't know what it was. I mean, I love Kirk. I love Cliff, obviously. But for me, it was something, they were just so cool.
Do you still have your records from when you were
My
a teenager?
vinyl.
Your vinyl records, and I mean cassettes, whatever you, yeah. Do you still have them?
I have a lot of vinyl in a storage in England that I'm going to ship over, and most of it is Black Sabbath.
They can stay here in London if you don't. If you know, I can
That's
look
that's
after
very
them.
nice of you. I actually never bought any Metallica vinyl. It was always on audio cassette because I was always taking it to work with me or to school with me and listening to it on the little Sony Walkman.
Yeah.
Jesus, I'm old. I remember listening to Battery for the first time ever, putting it on a cassette. My friend had got it for me for my birthday. I put it in and I'm like, oh, gee, I can't even fucking believe how this sounds. It was just like if you've never heard that kind of music before, and suddenly you're hearing the the synchronization of the drums and the guitar are one instrument. It's one thing. That's the thing. I think that's why I liked Lars and James so much, is because really, when they're playing, it's one creature. You
Mm.
know, the result is this cyborg of the two of them together. It
Yeah.
just blew my mind to pieces.
Were the Beatles at all any influence on you?
Yeah, for sure, but more with regards to harmony, in particular vocal harmonies, and the way in which they would move. So I'm going to get a little bit sort of technical. They obviously knew theory, but to an extent, they would do things that didn't fit into modal theory. So they, for example, they would play a chord and then move to one from a different key.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and at the time, because I didn't think you could do that back then, I was like, what? Why does it work? It shouldn't be. Those two chords don't sit together in a diatonic major mode. Those chords don't exist in that structure. So why is it allowed? Why does it work? How are they doing it? I just didn't understand that you could just change key or use the circle of fifths or all these things. So they were always confusing to me in an amazing way. Um, but really, I mean, I loved loads of Beatles stuff. I listened to lots of Beatles and didn't know it was the Beatles at the time
Oh, did
because
you?
my parents just put it on vinyls and there was this track that I loved and I was like, oh, I love that track. But for some reason, I just never knew it was the Beatles.
Yeah, the Beatles came very late into my life, really. I mean, I've obviously listened to them, in my my teenage years, and while I was still kind of like, learning a lot about rock and metal and being totally influenced by all the rock and metal dinosaurs. But the Beatles actually came into my life quite late. So did the Rolling Stones and Pink Floyd. But finally, I got it, and I can absolutely say that, I mean, the Beatles are my favorite band nowadays.
I mean, what an amazing position to be in. People that connected emotionally and spiritually with such a much simpler world, and whenever you write something, you're not comparing it to a million songs you've heard before. Because this is something I think is a bind to musicians nowadays. You write something, and because there's so much music out there that you can listen to all day long, you go, oh, am I ripping off this or that, or does it sound like that or this? When they wrote something, they were almost certain it was theirs. Do you know what I mean? There was no, they weren't fettered or chained by the concern or ghosts of it being from something else.
What I find really fascinating about the Beatles is that they were so young, and they had like a very, very short career when you think about it. 62, 63, 69,
Yeah,
70, and every album was so different from each other, and all of them are so great. And they did it all. I mean, they went from they were the first ones on everything. They were the first stadium act in the world when we didn't have PAs,
yeah,
for music to be played out from. And the way that they maintained themselves so grounded, even getting to a point that, touring for them, I mean, we just want to do music. We just want to be in the studio and create art. and
Yeah.
explore. Even because what they were recording basically from, when you get Rubber Soul onwards, Revolver, you wouldn't. There was no way to reproduce that live anyway, you know. And I was just listening to a podcast today with Rick Rubin and Giles Martin, the son of the late George Martin, and he was basically just saying. I mean, it was just something. They didn't take long. It was not that they were like spending weeks or months trying to perfect sounds. They would record albums in 8, 10 days. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was just because they were really, really good. They had a great
Yeah.
chemistry as a band, a great chemistry with the team working with them, and these people back then, they were great. They were good. They knew how to make it sound good,
Yeah.
and I find that really, really incredible. I mean, I don't know if you watched the Get Back documentary. You
Do you
know,
know what? I say things like that. I I didn't watch it. I'm not going to watch it yet. I never listened to Van Halen. I won't listen to it yet, ever.
what do you mean?
I've never listened to Van Halen.
Nah,
I am.
no, I
I'm
don't believe
serious.
you.
No. Okay, one song because I had to listen to one song for a video. I'm saving it because I know.
That's incredible. I like
I
that.
know one day I am going to need some kind of inspiration, a pickup, a medicine, a remedy, and I know I'm going to put on some Van Halen, and all of my fucking influences loved that band. I know I'm going to love it. I know I'm going to want to watch the Beatles movie. Um, and there are another 3 or 4 things like that, and I'm just like, I'm saving that for me, for when I need it, rather than just consume it when I'm told to. I'm holding it back.
I like that. I mean, I'm very I've never heard such thing from anyone. I think I do. I think I do that to a certain extent. Sometimes with maybe a movie, maybe a book, maybe like if I'm on a series of books and then I mean the third one is coming and that's the last one. Maybe I'll leave that for late. Something like that. But to the extent that you're a guitarist, a professional musician, you've made a life not only playing the instrument, learning the instrument, playing the instrument, teaching about the instrument, but actually building the instrument, you
Yeah,
know. And you've never listened to Van Halen's discography, and then it brings back the question of what we were just talking about a minute ago about we've only we never know tomorrow, and we only have the moment right here right now.
yeah.
And isn't it too risky maybe to just leave such magnificent
I guess.
discography?
Yeah, you are right. Um, but at the same time, okay, let me put it this way. Do you play guitar
A
as
little
well?
bit, yeah.
Okay, so it, anyone that plays guitar to a good competency will remember a feeling of when they suddenly understood what their heroes were doing, and it dispelled the magic a little bit. And I want to delay that as much as possible with a lot of my heroes. And it's difficult because when I hear music, I can kind of see it on the fretboard, and when I hear a vocal like Tina Turner, I love Tina Turner. When I hear her singing, I can kind of feel where it would be in the area. Is it head, is it mix, whatever. And because so many of my influences were influenced by Van Halen and bands, by the way, I've done it with Alcatraz too. I haven't listened to Alcatraz. I really wanted not to listen to the source until I made a decision that it was the time, because I felt like it would be it's going to be a special. I mean, can you imagine when I finally listen to Van Halen? I'm going to get a bottle of whiskey, sit down in a room, and I'm going to put on, one of the albums, and I'm going to be like, this is just
Oh my
like,
God, yeah.
it's going to be mind blowing.
I find it amazing nowadays that it happens to me in many different ways, like from listening to because with obviously DSPs, you know, Spotify, Apple Music, and all that nowadays,
Yeah,
it's so. I mean, everything is so accessible. So, for example, I would never dive into full discographies of several different artists if it wasn't because of digital music, because I wouldn't
yeah,
go to a record store and like buy uh, the whole Muddy Waters discography to listen to if it wasn't because of DSPs. And by having access to that, I'm discovering still so many artists from the past, you know, that are just simply incredible. And even like just like I said, like, you know, artists that you would I grew up, you know, knowing about and hearing about. But like, okay, Pink Floyd, yeah, I knew the Wall, obviously, you know, I knew a little bit of Dark Side of the Moon, but I've never actually engaged with the whole discography and then understanding what's going on behind the machine, as they themselves actually mentioned in Welcome to the Machine on Wish You Were Here. Like what was happening with them at the time as individuals. And I find it incredible the fact that we can do that nowadays with, you know, digital music. And leaving like an entire discography on the side, like Van Halen's. I'm like, I mean, what happens if you're in a car with someone and then on the radio,
yeah.
it, I mean, it's
Oh no,
impossible
that's
to not
happened.
have
I've been in a band van, and they went to put Van Halen on, and I've gone, could we put
skip
on
this
some
one.
sugar or something? Just let me have this one at some point. It's just I want to have those. I mean, ideally, I'd have it on vinyl. I'd have a good vinyl player. I move. The dream is I move into my new. I just bought a house. I'm moving to my new house probably about a year from now. Get my studio set up. Bottle of Glenfiddich. Put on the vinyl. Bad, 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 bad. You know, and I'm going to be like, fuck. And then I'll probably write 3 albums of instrumental shred. You know,
Amazing, amazing.
it's a well to
So
draw
well,
from. You
yeah.
know,
The
rather
get
than Van Halen.
Yeah, the Get Back documentary is like, I mean, I watched it like twice, and it's a very long documentary for anyone to watch it twice. But it's just imagine like having like nowadays everyone films everything, like, you know, you go in the
Yeah.
studio, several cameras. But I mean, even that, the Beatles did a documentary filming everything back in late 60s. I mean, there's nothing that the Fab Four didn't do it. And it's fantastic to see the synergy, the magic. And that was not their prime. That was like a moment of which they were not, you know,
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
peak of their inspiration or even of their personal relationships with each other. And you see managers and them talking, and Paul and John having a discussion, but they were so ahead in every aspect of like, you know, artistically, as individuals, as you know, human beings, that even their discussions were, I mean, it was clever, it was intelligent, it was quiet, it was I mean, honestly, it's just, it's beyond me. I think honestly, I say this to all my friends, musicians, people that work with music. It's like, dude, it's a gift to have access to such preciosity, you know. It's like, I mean, you gotta watch that, because that's like, that's, you know, if you watch that, I mean, you learn I mean, on my from my perspective, pretty much like a huge chunk of how to do things if you want to be in this crazy industry, which is, you know, the music industry.
Probably it's up there with that Metallica documentary where they brought in, you know,
Some Kind of Monster, that's
some kind
everything.
of monster was for me was life changing. You know, that and Pantera Volga videos with suicidal tendencies and everything. Oh man, fuck, I love that so much. Um, yeah, I am very excited to watch the relationships and see the creation of the. I've even turned off during the trailers because I don't want to see it yet. I'm like that. I save things for the right time because it's useful. Because if I'm continually absorbing all the time, all the time, all the time, it doesn't always hit the way it should do. Whereas if I wait until I'm ready, sometimes it hits in a way that it needed to.
How do you keep tab of those things? Do you have like a book or something that you write things down so you don't forget it? Because there must be quite a few things in not.
I have I keep things in drafts in my email. Like Winger are about to release an album. I'm not listening to that until I'm ready. Because like when I was a kid, I loved Winger. You know, yeah, Alcatraz, Winger. There's an old fantastic Negrito album that I love. Cypress Hill. Um,
What happens
there's
with what happens? Sorry, what happens with live music? Are there any artists that you're like, I love this guy so much, and I'm gonna wait till to go see him
Nah, no.
live?
If it's a band that I really love, I'll see them live. You know, but you can't go see Van Halen live now. You know, closest I got to it was supporting Extreme. You know, but and I haven't had the chance to see a lot of live music. Really living in Malta, kind of doing my thing here, which has been a bit of a shame. Um, but hopefully we'll get out and do some touring. Think that the world has changed again. I'm now European again.
I was
So
going to
hopefully I'll
say
get out and
because
tour.
you living in, I mean, growing up in the Netherlands, and I would have imagined that you had acquired the Dutch citizenship back then, but you didn't. You're British, and now you just became a Maltese as well, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I cheated. I married one, and through so I'm getting lots and lots and lots of calendar entries about school for the kids and stuff. Yeah, I'm marrying Natasha. I didn't marry her to become Maltese because at the time I had no idea we were going to move here. But we got married. She became English, which cost her loads of money and a huge exam. And you know, have you got a British passport?
Yeah, I've been through it all.
So
Yeah,
you've been through the whole process, right?
the
Yeah,
whole
it's
process. Yeah,
insane.
it's
You
insane.
are more British than I am.
It's
Hats off to you.
it's honestly, I mean, you go through that. I think first the English test that you have to pay quite a bit of money to do it. It's
Yeah,
really silly.
yeah.
I mean, it's really silly. And the
Well,
what's
like how many people in the Houses of Lords in Scotland, and what do they eat in Wales on a Thursday? And it's just like, come on, no
exactly?
one knows this stuff.
No.
British people don't know these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, becoming Maltese, go to this office. Hello. Okay, we're going to interview you. What did you buy your wife for Christmas last year? I got her. It's a Harry
Seriously.
Potter dressing. What colour are the walls in your living room? White. What did you watch on TV last night? Physical 100. And you cook. Me. Okay, get out, bring your wife in. They ask her the same questions. If we're the same, you go, they're like, welcome to Malta. You're Maltese now. I'm like, what?
What?
You don't want me to speak any Maltese? You don't want me? They're like, no, no, welcome to the country you're in. That's it.
Really
I mean,
that
you have to
easy?
be married for a certain number of years, and you know, and I had to have a signatory and somebody to, you know, these different things in place. But there was no exam, no money. Just you're in, you're Maltese. Congratulations, you're now European and Schengen. Welcome to
Oh my God,
a tiny
that's so
island.
easy,
Yeah,
easy and straightforward.
and I was very proud to become Maltese.
Oh yeah, you guys been together for a long while, right?
10 years, mate.
10 years. Ten
Crazy, huh?
years. And how many kids now?
2,
Fantastic.
no more. I've got a 3-year-old girl and a 6-year-old boy.
Oh man, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
What a an amazing thing to, well, have in life, I guess. You know, a beautiful family like that. Sometimes I wonder if I'll get to that point. You know, if something like that, something
You know,
incredible like that will happen to me. Not that I am like focusing on that right now,
yeah,
but you know, sometimes you wonder because when you're in your 20s, you're like, nah, not thinking about it. Then you
yeah.
start your 30s, and then you don't think about it. And then now I'm on my just started my 40s, and then I'm like, not thinking about it still, but like, but then again, I mean, till when are you
Yeah.
gonna wait
I
for
mean,
that? You know?
you're lucky though, Kyle, because you're a guy, and really the only, and also you're healthy because you need a strong core. or you're going to have a back problem, you're going to have joint issues, juggling children, running around with them all the time, changing nappies at 3 in the morning, all the endless stuff. You'll be fine. It's harder for the woman if she gets a bit older, obviously physically. Um, but I mean, I'm an older father. I'm 47 and my daughter's 3. And at first I thought, oh no, what am I doing? This is wrong. But it's amazing because at 47, I have businesses in place. I'm blessed in as far as I don't have to worry about money, and so now I have time to be with my kids, and I spend every day when they come back from school, I'm there cooking and chilling out and talking to them, building Legos and Play-Doh, and she wants to I go into the bedroom and I'm feeding her dolls ice cream and stuff, and I love playing and being with my kids, which I think in my younger years I wouldn't have been able to do so much because I would have been having to grind and work and get my, that between your 20s and 40s is when you go, okay, what am I going to do? What's the dream? Pursue that dream. And then when you get out of that side of things and you're a bit more stability, then you've got more time.
Stability.
So now I feel like it was the right time to have kids, a bit older for me, because I have more time to spend with them. And COVID, although it was awful, for me it was kind of a blessing because I moved here 3 years ago, and I spent every day of 3 years, pretty much, apart from being in America or other countries for touring or clinics, I spent them with my kids, and a lot of parents don't get that opportunity.
It's true. It's very true. It's very true. Rob, I wanted to ask you, where does your entrepreneurial side comes from? Because you've always, I mean, you've been very obviously successful in all of the things that you've engaged, and they are not small things. Even from starting, just like you said, posting videos on YouTube, just to put something out there for the times, to not, to be able to show people what you're doing in terms of guitar techniques and stuff. But then eventually that becomes a source of income, and it becomes something that you create a bit on a professional level, and then obviously putting together Chapman guitars and succeeding with that, which is like you got to be very courageous to enter that kind of world, because there's so many competitors out there and so many big brands out there and so many things that that can detriment your path within this realm of the business. So where would you say this entrepreneurial side of Rob Chapman comes from?
It comes from when I used to work for Richard Branson. I spent a number of years while I was teaching guitar working for Virgin Mobile. And at the inception of that business, as it was launched, I was working at Virgin Mobile originally as a call centre guy on the phones. Hello, welcome to Virgin Mobile. How can I help you? Rob Chapman speaking. To becoming a team leader, to being more involved in marketing, to the point where I met Richard Branson a bunch of times and would be able to speak to him. And so I did what anyone would have done. I went, how did you make loads of money? What do you do? And he just said, whatever you see around you that is successful is mainly successful because of the brand. And I didn't really get it at first. I remember one day walking into the coffee area, and he got a coffee from the machine. He was just stood there in his jumper. I was like, hey man, got a coffee. I've never been afraid of people, and I think a lot of people would be around him, so he kind of liked that I was just, hey man, how's it going, sort of thing. And we were talking about brand, and he said, do you want to buy a bottle of sugar water? I've got this brown sugar water. It's delicious. And I'm like, so, it sounds good. I've got Pepsi Coke. It's the fresh new, and I'm like, all right. I see what happened there. You cast a magic spell on a thing to make it have a feeling that people want to associate with or interact with. Brand is what people buy, and that's okay. As long as the product is good, then it's fine. And I started to understand that brand and branding is a bit like a song. It's something that gives you a feeling. It's something that leaves you with an emotion. It's creating a world in which you can exist. And so for me, I fell in love with that concept. I never set out to own a guitar company. I was given a guitar company twice. Once with Chapman, when I was offered this signature guitar, the ML1. We were going to make 50. We ended up selling 500, and it became the company that set this one guitar up said, you should really consider launching this as a brand. And I was like, are you kidding me? What do you mean? And they were like, you've got a brand there. It's not just one guitar. And thankfully, Lee Anderton was there to help out and connect the dots and make it into something real. And then more recently with Cerberus, Michael, a friend of mine in America, wanted me to be involved with his guitar company and brought me in as a part owner. I have never intentionally gone out to launch a business. They have been given to me or come to me through whatever universal means is. But I have been good and successful at branding them so that they have a feeling that people can associate with. And for Chapman, it was all about collaboration, being part of a fraternity, a band of brothers, and maybe like 3 or 4 sisters, and working together and people and music and stuff, and not competing. Yeah, there are other guitar brands. That's great. I like them. I would be honoured to be considered one of the guitar brands amongst the big 5 or 6, I have no aspirations to be Fender. I can't. They are Fender. But it was working with Richard Branson where I learned about brand. And he said, even if you want to go and wash windows, but you work for yourself, you'll make more money than 80% of jobs on the high street because you're working for yourself. It's your time, it's your money, it's your income. And I'd never been told that before. No one had ever said, no one at school had said, oh yeah, have you ever thought about having your own business and then, having a taxi rank or a takeaway or a burger van but then suddenly I'm like, well, how much do burger vans make? What? A burger van can make $500,000 a year? What the, I remember on a train from Trowbridge to London, I sat opposite this guy. It was like a movie scene. He pulled his newspaper down and he went, do you want to know how to make loads of money? And I was like, what? And it was like, I'm gonna tell you how I made loads of money. And I'm like, okay. This is a bit like one of those adverts you get on YouTube now. And he said, when I was 20, I worked on a popcorn stand in the middle of Trowbridge town. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it was like a little tiny 2 wheels and a stand, and it would make popcorn, and he would sell it. And he said he saved that money and he bought the popcorn stand. And then he had someone else run it for him, and he let them, he's still there because it cut out for a second, he let them keep 50% of the profit. And the other 50% he saved while he did a different job and he bought another popcorn stand, and then it cascades. And I saw the pattern, and I realised, well, if you keep going, you're going to have 100 popcorn stands. The world's going to be full of popcorn, and you're going to have loads of money. And he said, yeah, but when you get 3 popcorn stands, you buy a burger van. And then when you've got 3 burger vans, you buy a restaurant. And when you've got 3 restaurants, and then you keep going. And I was like, what? Wow. This is interesting. This is something, it's like a game. It's like a computer game. It builds. And I was interested in that. And so I think I've retained the interest in growing things that are creative and to do with celebration of brotherly love and music and stuff. So Chapman exists and Snake Oil exists and Cerberus and Guitar Marie, and I'm sort of dancing around the outskirts trying to make it all work, but not interfere with the people that really run it for me, you know.
Yeah. I'm gonna mention again this podcast I was listening today while I was out on my run, and one thing that Giles was mentioned was the famous Montserrat Studios. You know, don't know if you will remember about that, but it was a huge studio in the 80s that George Martin, it was basically his dream, you know. It was in a town with like potential, I think it was like 11,000 people back then, and extremely remote, very difficult to get to. Obviously, can you imagine, like, you know, the logistics involved, not only to set up the studio but also to bring, you know, clients there. And one thing that he was saying was that the idea was to basically create a space where the artists themselves would have just the inspiration to lose themselves, not thinking about time, not what time of the day it was, not being recognized out on the streets, having the privacy to be able to go to a chicken shop, which is something that Elton John used to love to do by himself, and just, you know, buy some chicken wings, you know. As simple as that. And I remember that that you have some ideas and plans to perhaps put together like a studio in Malta, right? At some point.
Yeah.
And I think I've mentioned it to you over the phone when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking again today about that. You know, having like a place where it's beautiful, where the weather is nice, where you have access to the sea, where it's not huge, and that you can actually accommodate people. So, you know, artists and perhaps, you know, crew and people can just come around and sleep on the surroundings, and just work and play music. Because I mean, I can't really think of anywhere in the world now that would focus on such thing, and obviously on such thing being on a like somewhat within a budget, because not many artists, well, when you think about it, like how many newcomers would have like a big interest in going to somewhere beautiful, spend an entire month in the studio just creating art and music, but not spending a ridiculous amount of money, which is something that they probably don't have, you know.
It's true. It's true. Well, we should talk about that later on, Carl.
All right. Okay.
Because the other guitar player in Clockwork, Luke, owns the biggest and best studio on the island, and it's in the middle of the island. And everything we record is recorded there. We have put up artists before and done that kind of thing there, and it's a beautiful experience. But
yeah, amazing. No, definitely, let's talk about it. It's something that if you manage to get something like that going, I mean, it would be very unique. I mean, like most artists nowadays, they just don't have the budget to kind of like to afford spending time in the studio. And
yeah, that's it.
And more often than not, I mean, nowadays you can do pretty much like everything anywhere, you know. You just bring the right mics, and you just, you know, you just use the right you know, gear and personnel, and you can just create, you know, amazing stuff virtually anywhere. But there are still some artists that really do want to kind of like go and work in the studio, write in the studio, communicate with people, like try different things, and be a bit more crafty and not just use their neural DSPs or campers and things like that.
I don't, not the neural. I'm using neural at the moment. Sometimes a real amp is necessary.
It's necessary.
Sometimes it's good to just have a little briefcase that you put down and just go, that's my amp. That's my JCM 800 T203.
Do you collect? I mean, you mentioned it earlier on that you probably have a lot of gear, but is it something that you kind of like you collect and you kind of constantly like on eBay trying to find specific bits and bobs?
No, I mean I'm very very fortunate in my life that a lot of people send me things, and so I am blessed to have. I mean, the room I'm in is full of stuff that people send me. So, I mean, I'm ashamed to say that sometimes, I mean, there are things here I've never even tried. So I don't really buy a lot because I'm like, God, I've got things here I haven't unboxed yet. I feel awful saying that, but it's the truth. People just send me things. They're like, hey, Rob, check out this new thing I've made because it's you could put it on YouTube. And I'm like, cool, send it. And I promise I'll try and open it soon. And a lot of people take my products and modify them and then send me what they've done. So I have a lot of guitars where either somebody has made a modification and I've gone, wow, that's really cool, I'll buy it from you so I can take a look, or they just send it to me. But the only thing I really want to buy right now is an Axe Effects. I just want to try one out. I've never tried one. I'm desperate to try an FM3, but I think they're going to bring something out now, so I'm holding off until now just in case.
Yeah. In terms of your go-to guitars, do you have like a couple of axes that you go to normally? ML1.
Well, this is the Hot Rod. This was a guitar that we made quite a while back. I wrote a lot of music on this, a lot of Dorje anyway. I use this. I use the Ghost Fret, which was the sort of EX exploration style body, and whatever is the latest, newest guitar, so I get the feel of it. Really, my favourite guitar is the latest one I've been sent by my team, because we get so many prototypes, and we're working on some original stuff, and so there's a flow, a consistent and continual flow of product through my flat, and a lot of it ends up at the studio. Paul Luke's just got rafters full of prototypes and Chapmans here and there. But I tend to navigate back to the Ghost Fret and the Hot Rod, and actually there was a guitar called the ML3 RC, because I was much more involved in their design. I wanted this to exist, and so it was made. The Ghost Fret, I went to the factory and worked on the CAD with them. The ML3 RC was really my signature model back in the heyday of Dorje. And so, because I was so involved in their DNA, they are how I would want them anyway. Do you know what I mean? Whereas Chapman now isn't for me. Chapman is for everyone else. It's the people's guitar company. We collaborate with other people through polls or through meeting them, or they email us, or whatever means necessary. And now I view Chapman Guitars, it's a guitar company that makes products for lots of other people. I've got mine. I don't need to make one for me anymore. Sometimes I make one anyway. But I've got 3 or 4 that I love. Like the semi-hollow ML3. It's amazing, But I'm a lot less into gear than people would think. And a lot more into great coffee, a beautiful meal, and jamming and writing music with my band. It's all about writing music with the guys in the studio and then taking it live,
Right on, Rob. Right on. I want to be mindful of your time, so I'm going to start winding down this beautiful conversation. I'm gonna get into some roller coaster questions. I just have a feeling that we could just keep going and going and going. So I'm sure we're gonna have to we're gonna have to do a part 2 at some point.
Sure.
And so I would start basically. The first one would be Do you have or follow any morning routines yourself?
Yes, I wake up, I have coffee, I practice a Chinese martial art called Bagua Jang, which is spiral dragon boxing. It has many health benefits, but ultimately it's a martial art, so it's for killing people. And I've been doing internal Chinese martial arts since I was 8.
Wow, wow, that
Qingyi, Bagua, Taiji, Yichuan, uh, lots. I used to teach.
wow, many talents, Rob. I didn't know about that either. So
I
you,
keep that secret, but I suppose, well, I've made some videos where I've shown it a little bit before, but the whole other side of my life is Chinese martial arts, Chinese food, Chinese language, Chinese medicine. My father's an acupuncturist. He's actually with me today. Um, he's a member of the British Acupuncture Council. He induced my son's birth, you know.
wow,
So I was always going to be an acupuncturist, martial artist until I got a guitar.
wow, fascinating, fascinating. Had no idea.
And I
Um,
apply all of the theory of Chinese martial arts to guitar playing, which is why I'm soft all the time, which is why I'm fast. Because if you're hard, you can't be quick. You need to be soft. So I use softness and yielding and the concepts of, I suppose, Taoism and apply 5 element theory in Taoism to writing music in the guitar. That's a whole other conversation.
well, it's a good segue to the second question, which would be, what's you normally I ask if the individual is a spiritual person, but I think from everything that we have talked today, that's kind of like pretty clear that you seem to be. And what would be? Do you have any particular beliefs, any religions that you follow, anything that you do in terms of spirituality on a daily basis, personally?
Uh, I haven't subscribed to a deity, so I wasn't expected to be asked that. I haven't chosen a path to follow, but through my own experiences with hours and hours of meditation and mindfulness, um, I know that there is no death. I feel like we are a radio or a TV and we tune into us, but actually, us is just one thing. Like, this is all of us, and then this is Rob Chapman, and then dead. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I feel like the body is receiving the spirit to an extent, um, but I am not. You wouldn't classify me as religious. I am a spiritually minded, interested person, and I have many uh, wonderful friends who are Christian, who are Buddhist, who are Hindu, who are Muslim, and I feel like we're all looking at the same apple from different points of view. It's the same thing, you know, whether you want to call it God or whatever you want to call it. I think it's the same. We're all alive in the same simulation or whatever it is, and we're all describing it from our cultural points of view. And there's a lot to be celebrated about that.
Do you practice meditation?
Yes, every single day. When you practice in what the Western world calls internal Chinese martial arts, and people are very familiar with Tai Chi, although they see it as this soft thing that is ineffective and just an exercise. Actually, it's all breaking bone movements and wrestling and a lot of grappling and gouging, but you don't really see that in the West. And in China, it's almost completely forgotten. There are very few people that really know it, but it's all done incredibly slowly to train the motor muscles and the slow triggers and quick triggers, and to allow you to fully coordinate the skeleton. And you can't do that until you are mindfully centered, breathing diaphragmatically and circulating the chi. So all of my practice is meditational, and I do a lot of mindful guitar playing. So I'll drone a note and I'll play modally over it in a meditative state.
Very cool. Wow, very interesting. Very interesting. This day you just mentioned that you will play a note and just try to kind of like tune in into that and sort of like be extremely present and just let that flow through you.
Channeling.
Channeling, yeah, channeling. I mean,
Yeah.
I firmly believe on that too. I firmly believe that we just we're experiencing, perceiving, and interacting with five senses that we have, but everything is coming from basically the perspective of the mind, and the mind emerges from consciousness, and we are just pure consciousness. We are just all one, but we forgot about that because it's thousands, hundreds of thousands of years of evolution,
Yeah.
as this creature, as this living biological creature, and and we completely forgot. We get too attached to the interactivity of daily basis and the world that we perceive as being real. So
Well, yeah. That that was a really good way of saying it because it's interesting now how physics is learning to explain a lot of the phenomena that certain spiritual practices have pointed to. For example, I'm not physically solid, neither are you.
mm,
I, I am a living chord. I'm a series of vibrations at a certain frequency. There's nothing physical in me, or you, or anything around me. And actually, everything is one thing. It's one vibrational frequency, literally. And when you soon realise that nothing really exists, I'm creating everything by being an observer. I think the game changes. For me, it did anyway.
for me, it did it too. Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%, 100%. So you mentioned it having a great meal. So what kind of food do you go when you're in need of a treat? I'm gonna treat myself
A
tonight.
treat.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go to Vecchia Napoli in Imrihel and get a pizza. They do amazing. They do gluten-free, dairy-free pizzas, and they're amazing. I love pizza.
Me too. Who
Yeah.
doesn't? Who doesn't? Rob, my
Yeah.
friend, thank you so much for your time today, man. I mean,
Thanks, Carl.
honestly, I've learned quite a bit today just from hearing you talk, and thank you for sharing your personal stories, very personal stories with us here today. I think there's huge, huge value in that, and I'm sure
Thanks,
that
dude.
people will be thrilled to, if they didn't know, to know a little bit more about your life journey and
Oh,
somewhat somehow be inspired by it to get out there and do things and just
I
be
hope it
better and
helps.
grow.
Yeah, I hope it helps. And also, come to Malta at some point. Come and get some coffee and some pizza. Well, come and hang.
100%
Come
I
and stay
will.
at mine.
I will.
As long as you don't mind getting up at 6 a.m. with the kids, you come and crash here.
Brilliant. Thanks, my friend.